truly impair that.
I know you're a huge proponent of the positive impacts of the tax cuts, and I'm most of the way with you, but we have another guest we want to bring in.
We have two other guests.
Two other guests.
Right now. Joining us right now to be part of this conversation, National Taxpayer Union Senior Fellow Mattie Duppler and former CK Restaurant CEO Andy Puzder. And wanted to get your reaction to what Steve was talking about and whether you think that this makes any sense. I'll go to Mattie first.
Yeah, so I agree with the comment earlier about how whether or not the Fed can outrun these bad effects of tariffs. Now, the thing is, the question that I have is why we're looking at tariffs now after the president has put so much momentum behind a tax cut policy and a deregulatory agenda that has focused on getting government out of the way of free enterprise. The problem with tariffs is they are taxes just paid at the border. With this new implementation of Mexico tariffs of 5%, that's $17 billion in new taxes. And quite frankly, what tariffs do is they decrease the amount of capital available for productive investment, they increase the cost of doing business here in the United States, and they raise the cost of goods for consumers. All of those things are reversals of what the president's been trying to do with deregulation and taxes. I don't think the Fed's going to be able to back out the effects of that.
Andy, you want to take the other side of that and try to square the circle? I can't hear you. I don't know. Now I can. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now? Okay, you
Yep.
can't defend the tariffs with Mexico on the basis that they're supposed to be an economic stimulus or they're supposed to detract from economic growth, because they aren't intended to be an economic stimulus. They're intended to address a national security issue. What the administration believes will help us economically is the USMCA. This is done because we are facing a crisis at the border. The president feels this is an important issue, that he should react to it aggressively. Congress isn't helping. We certainly don't want troops on the border. So I think this is a rational way to address that issue, but you can't defend them economically. They weren't intended to be an economic stimulus.
The issue is whether this is going to be an effective tool in somehow changing the situation at the border.
Well, we don't know. We're not going to know that until we find out how the Mexicans react. I know they're sending a delegation to Washington, D.C. We'll get some serious. At least the issue will be seriously addressed.
But ultimately, doesn't mean
whether it'll be effective
U.S.
or not, I
consumers
can't
will have
say.
less money. Mexico will have less money. Everyone will have less money to do all the things that we need to do to deal with some of the border issues.
Here's
Well,
here's
I mean,
what we know.
but Congress isn't going to give them the money anyway. You know, so it doesn't make. I don't know that addresses the national security. Look, Jay Johnson said we have a crisis at the border. Would Jay Johnson, the former Secretary of DHS under Obama, say we had a crisis if we didn't have a crisis? He wouldn't.
I'll stipulate with you that call it a crisis, call it a problem, call it whatever you want. We have to fix it. I'm not saying there's nothing to fix here. The question is, what is the fix? The Wall Street Journal talks about the laws in the United States needing to change. That might be a fix, but the question is whether tariffs unto themselves can actually be effective. But
here's what we know. What we know is that the New York Fed did a study, and they estimated that the tariffs on China would cost $830 per household. That was around, depending upon what estimates you use, for about the benefit to each household of the tax cut. The Mexican tariffs would be worth more than that. All I want to know is I want to see the administration study that says these tariffs on Mexico will give me an economic benefit that is beyond the cost per household. The trouble is, I'm pretty sure that study doesn't exist, because
nor were the tariffs intended to do that.
Here's what's even more perplexing about the notion that tariffs are an effective tool right now. Annie mentioned USMCA. At the exact same time that the administration had announced these new round of tariffs on Mexico, they also increased the steps moving forward on USMCA by offering a new statement of administrative policy that went to the Hill. This is weeks after the administration pulled back on tariffs that were already in place on Mexico and Canada, those steel and aluminum tariffs that have been in place for a better part of a year. So if tariffs are an effective tool, why would the administration back out of those tariffs, only to turn around and put new tariffs on the Mexican economy and on the imports, the $350 billion worth of imports that are coming into our country? It simply is inconsistent, and it doesn't make sense as a point of leverage.
Andy, I'm going to leave you with the last word, sir.
Sure. You have to look at these things differently. What we've done with steel tariffs, what we're doing with the USMCA, is based on economics. Free trade and fair trade are good for the economy. What he's doing with respect to these current tariffs is trying to address a national security issue at the border. They're not the same. You can't judge them the same.
Tariffs are a blunt instrument. They're a poor tool for doing that.
Okay. Well, Mattie got the last word, but we appreciate both of you being with us, Steve, as well. Thanks, guys.
When we return, Kevin Hassett announcing that he is stepping down as the president's chief economic advisor. He will join us for his first